No mind to think, no will to break, no voice to cry suffering. But can you really have someone like that? What does it mean to not think? How can you have an invincible will? Is it possible to disregard whatever suffering you are going through forever? If you couldn't tell, this is a Hollow Knight / Pale King video. It's about the both of them, their life and journey, and the futility of the Pale King's plan. But before getting to the start of the video, let's first make things less confusing. I will call the game itself Hollow Knight, and the character called the Hollow Knight, let's just call him the Chosen Vessel. The protagonist we play as will, of course, be called the Knight. Okay? Cool. Had to make things clear first. I couldn't think of a better name for the Hollow Knight, so just stick with it for now, okay? And lastly, obvious spoilers for the game Hollow Knight if you weren't aware. First, let's talk about the world of Hollow Knight. In Hollow Knight, as far as we are aware, there aren't any humans. Hopefully. Instead, every character and entity is a bug or some other really small creature. Or a mushroom. They aren't exactly like humans. They are naturally less, let's just say civilized, like actual bugs. That is the case for most bugs in the grand, tiny world of Hollow Knight. There are exceptions like the mushrooms, the mantises, or the spiders, but for the most part, they are like regular bugs. But there are also certain creatures, or deities, called the higher beings. They are basically like bug gods. It's like a pantheon, but most of them aren't connected to one another. And one of these higher beings is called the Pale King. The Pale King originally was a big, giant worm that simply dug around and did what any upstanding worm does, I guess. Which includes hatching from an egg inside its body to become a radiant white bug, destined to be a king. You know, normal worm things. The worms are basically just fancy worm bugs with lots of divinity. They have clairvoyance, which means that they can see into the future. But even with that, they most likely all went extinct. If you want to listen to the fat, masochistic bug. If that is the case, then that means that while they can see into the future, they can't change it. They can't turn it into something else, no matter what. Otherwise, they would most likely still be alive. There are also other forms of higher beings like a heart, a tree, moss bag, and even the sun. But the bug that we are focusing on for now was a worm called Pale King, or Jacob. As a worm, or possibly a higher being, Jonathan the Pale King could grant sapience to the bugs around him. He could make them self-aware. Why do that? Because he wanted subjects. He couldn't be a king without people, could he? Of course, some bugs were already self-aware, like the mantises or even the mushrooms. But most were just walking, crawling husks. Either way, after some time, the Pale King made his own kingdom. A kingdom that would last till the end of time. A kingdom that would never fall, remaining as the last civilization after every other kingdom fell. And this kingdom was called Hallownest. I said was because eventually, like any other kingdom, it fell. After Jerome the Pale King fully made his kingdom into, well, a kingdom, things were looking great. Sure, the spiders were kind of hostile to him, but he could make arrangements. His capital was built below a giant, endless lake, which is where the name City of Tears comes from. But that wouldn't be a problem either. Yeah, I don't know why he did that either. He had a really horny queen with him, so he wasn't alone in his rule. That queen, like him, was a pale being, which is a subgroup of a higher being. What's the difference? Well, it's the skin color, they are white. The game doesn't actually tell us much about pale beings, but we do know that there's a power in paleness. Pale beings can control / mold the void. For example, the Pale King could make void guards to guard his main castle, and the Pale Flower, which we get from the questline, can, at least visually, delete a big void guard. So they have an advantage against the black entities. There were other higher beings around, but they weren't a problem. The Pale King could coexist with them. Or at least, most of them. One of the higher beings that were around before the Pale King was the Radiance. The Radiance was worshipped by the moths, but after the Pale King began ruling over Hallownest, they turned their backs on the Radiance, becoming the Pale King's subjects instead. The Radiance was eventually forgotten. Betrayed, she mostly stayed in her dream realm. I will talk about this in the next section. While forgotten, remnants of her remained, like the big totem looking over Hallownest, literally a looming threat. It was sad and mad because, well, she got betrayed by her own people. The moths were apparently a really pacifistic group of bugs, so most likely the Radiance was a rather soothing light. But with the betrayal, she turned to rage. She would become the main god of Hallownest. This time, forcefully. She would do whatever was necessary, even turning the bugs of Hallownest into mindless slaves. But what are dream realms? First, let's talk about dreams and essence. Dreams are memories, remnants of things far gone. For example, spirits and, well, actual dreams. And those dream remnants are made up of essence. The dream nail, which is an ancient moth tribe artifact, can both harvest essence from dreams and enter them. Most likely, the more powerful the memories, the more essence it takes to maintain them. For example, the backer box from Kickstarter all give 1 essence from being dream nailed. They don't fight, they simply exist. Then, you have the Hallownest dream bosses. Markoth, Elderhu, Galleon, Markoth, No Eyes, Zero, and Markoth are some examples. They are strong enough to resist you, so they are made up of more essence. And then you have the Dream Realm bosses. These are entities with their own dream realms that you have to fight them in. Examples include Failed Champion, Soul Tyrant, and Lost Kin. These bugs with Dream Realm, of course, are made up of even more essence. So, basically, the fancier the dream, the more essence. As far as we know, all higher beings also have essence. Jared the Pale King and Radiance are 2 of them. The Pale King is powerful enough to eventually put a whole palace inside his dream realm, so he's no joke. But on the other hand, the Radiance was a higher being of dreams. So, if Pale King's whole thing is to be a ruler, then the Radiance is the god of dreams. But not just dreams of already dead bugs, she can take control of anything with a will. Dream nailing alive bugs helps the knight, our protagonist, read the minds of most bugs. Some more divine entities are aware of this, but most aren't. Dreams aren't fully bound by reality either. Zod has a shrine dedicated to him by a bug that sees him as a heroic legend. Her admiration for him is so strong that it results in a dream version of Zod that actually is a heroic legend. Because of the same thing, we can fight Ogrim at his prime. So dreams are complicated. Either way, the Radiance can invade the dreams of already living bugs. The Radiance promises power, peace, and whatever else someone might want or need. But in turn, she takes full control of the person infected. There's a twisted way of granting wishes. It's an infection, which is why it's called the infection. The infection can also manifest physically as an orange substance. This orange infection juice can even create new life and spread vines and other things from itself. In other words, it's powerful. It's like a parasite. It's a zombie virus, whatever you want to call it. In short, dream realms, dreams, memories, essence, powerful dreams, even more powerful dreams, god of dreams, infection, loss of will, zombie apocalypse controlled by a god, and eventually, the loss of a grand glorious kingdom. I think I have explained most of the concepts important to this video, so let's just get back to the timeline. After Jill the Pale King built Hallownest, things were looking great. He managed to spread his kingdom all over the region with actual transportation. The stags, tramways, regular roads. Hallownest became an interconnected ant farm, and things had no signs of stopping. He had a great researcher in Monoan, a bug that watched things, terrible relations with the spiders, until he made a child with the queen of the spiders for a deal. Apparently the White Lady, the other pale being, the queen of Hallownest, was really into that. You get the point. The 5 great knights, the scholars, the union between 2 higher beings, the kingdom of Hallownest was truly looking eternal. But no kingdom can truly be eternal. Every kingdom will eventually fall, one way or another, due to a revolution, an outside force, conspiracy, or even just bad luck. It doesn't matter. Everything has an end, whether it's life, a kingdom, or a dream. Things will always have a finality, and the Radiance was that finality. Strange things started happening. Some people started having dreams of a soothing, bright sun, a comforting light promising salvation. Some gave in and slowly lost their minds. Others resisted and got blinded by it even more tremendously. It started happening everywhere. Some bugs, like the mantises, were more resistant, but the more common bugs had no choice but to give in to the light. The infection began. Hallownest started to fall. The Pale King and his court had to do something. First, they started closing their borders, stopping the tramways and halting the stags. After all, It was like a spreading virus. But that didn't stop it. The infection first focused on enslaving the mind, not the body. All that did was slow things down. The scholars attempted to use soul, the life force of most bugs, to achieve a deep focus, a state of mind untainted by the infection. But they were already being controlled by the light. Because of the research, they managed to survive the infection eventually, but were driven mad, possibly because of a mix of the infection and their experiments. The Pale King greatly opposed this plan of theirs because it required the souls of many, many bugs. Most likely, if I had to guess, they actually did stop the research for a while. We will get back to this later. As the infection was spreading, things were looking grim. But the Pale King did have a plan. He couldn't kill the Radiance, after all, she was in her own dream realm, but he could contain her if he did everything right. For that, he needed a vessel, something that was unfeeling enough to not give in to the infection, and 3 dreamers went to lock away that vessel in a temple. The vessel would focus the radiance onto itself, so that way, the radiance would be imprisoned in the mind of that quote-unquote empty vessel, unable to spread anywhere. Everything was hanging on this plan. The kingdom fall was coming faster and faster. And to start it off, he had to breathe. There is one higher being that I haven't delved into at all that is very important to the story. Not exactly a higher being, but more of a lower being. And that is the Void. The Void isn't exactly a fully conscious being, but a force that rejects everything other than itself. It directly opposes pale beings and apparently was an ancient enemy to the Radiance. So basically, think of it like grand blue fantasy where the light element and the dark element are both very effective against each other. But here, instead of it being elements, it's, well, godly forces. It can be calmed with a strong enough light source, but for the most part, it's volatile to anything that isn't fully void, including the night until we get the Void Heart. The Void has the potential to be a true force of nature, but because it isn't unified by anything, it mostly lays dormant in the bottom of the abyss. Now, what does this have to do with Jimmy the Pale King? Well, at some point, possibly before the infection started, he worked on the abyss, experimenting with it, and seeing what he could do with it. Beings like the King's Mold and the Collector were the results of that, so he knew he could use the Void to create constructs and, likely, called life. An egg marinated in Void could probably turn the bugs in it into emotionless husks, but not any type of egg would do. So, with the help of the White Lady, he and her, well, bred on, and threw all the eggs they made into the bottom of the abyss, corrupting them with the Void. An entity born from God and Void, divinity and nothingness. A strong, capable shell with an unmoving soul, incapable of infection. The eggs hatched, and the Pale King watched as they tried climbing to the top, trying to get to him. They only needed one vessel, and the rest would simply be locked away in the abyss, forever. To prove themselves, These toddlers had to show the Pale King their sick parkour skills and their ability to navigate through the dark. The Pale King would give out a score from 1 to 10 and rate them on how mesmerizing their parkour skills are. He would even rank them, the ones at the bottom of the list being executed on the spot for not being cool enough to live. But no, most likely none of that mattered. Most likely, he really didn't have time for any of this and wanted to get back to the White Lady for some more breeding. So he just took the first one that reached him and left the others to rot. Okay, I will be serious this time, I swear! Anyway, it didn't matter which vessel made it to the top, he just needed one. And because there was no real good way to test possibly thousands of vessels in a short time, he just took the first one and, for real, left the other ones to actually rot in the abyss. After all, even if it was for the sake of the kingdom, it would be a dark part of history better left forgotten. And that chosen vessel was, well, the quote-unquote Hollow Knight. Or as I said in the intro, the chosen vessel. It's a less complicated name. Our protagonist, the knight, was the second vessel to reach the top, but he was abandoned anyway, like all the others. In the words of the Pale King to the chosen vessel, no cost too great, no mind to think, no will to break, no voice to cry suffering, born of God and void. You shall seal the blinding light that plays through your dreams. You are the vessel. You are the Hollow Knights. The chosen vessel had to be trained, most likely for a better image. It was raised by both the Pale King and the White Lady. Actually, the Pale King and the chosen vessel spent a lot of time with each other. Whenever we see the memories of the Pale King or the chosen vessel, they are together. As far as we know, Hornet and the chosen vessel are the only children of Jeff the Pale King to be revealed to the public. Every other vessel was left forgotten, though some did eventually escape the abyss through other routes, likely through the deepness, the kingdom's edge, and other paths we just didn't see. The knight was one of them. For whatever reason, being colored by the abyss turned every vessel genderless. The chosen vessel, the knight, the lost kin, they're all genderless, which is why Hornet is called the gender child. Anyway, enough about the vessels. Let's get back to the Pale King and the chosen vessel. As I have already said, the Pale King and the chosen vessel spent a lot of time together. If it wasn't for the whole sealing for eternity thing, the Pale King would have actually been a decent father to the chosen vessel. They spent so much time together that they start to actually really care for each other, which is what led to the downfall of Hallownest. The vessels were meant to be hollow in mind, will, and emotion, like a robot. That is why the chosen vessel was deemed, well, the Hollow Knight. They were only meant to seal their radiance away, not much else. They weren't meant to feel, they were made to not feel anything at all. But the love the Pale King gave the chosen vessel was too much. The chosen vessel also started to love the Pale King, a father-son dynamic, normally incredibly admirable, was what led Hallownest to its doom. Eventually, because of probably training, the chosen vessel grew up, unlike every other vessel we see in the game. I don't understand vessel biology either. I didn't take classes. After the chosen vessel grew to the size we know, they even erected statues for him, and also the dreamers I talked about before. A temple was built near the surface of the entire kingdom, and the chosen vessel was meant to be sealed there with the radiance. So, that's what happened. They sealed him in the temple, with the dreamers acting as locks, imprisoning the chosen vessel. The plan was fully in motion. If the Pale King had done everything right, the infection would be over. But as you already know, things fell apart, slowly but surely. We don't know exactly how much of an effect Joseph the Pale King's plan had, but we do know that at most it delayed the inevitable. This part's accuracy isn't too important, so I'm just gonna speculate a little. At first, after the sealing, things seemed fine. The Pale King had prevented the infection from spreading all over the kingdom. But as time passed, infection started seeping through the temple, and it was beginning to take the kingdom hostage again. And it was getting worse by the day. Hallownest was in a state of chaos. The Pale King had no other plans, no other way to combat the Radiance. The only reason the Knight is able to fight the Radiance is because of the Dream Nail, which is given to us by possibly the last remnant of the Moth Tribe. The Pale King had no way to really kill the Radiance. Sealing it was the best he could come up with. The infection kept getting worse, tearing his kingdom apart. He could do nothing but watch as his life's work was crumbling right in front of him. As far as we know, even he wasn't truly safe from the infection either. The Pale King had built his palace below his capital, furthering him away from the commoners and even the nobles. The Pale King, like any other higher being, had dream powers, even if they weren't on the same level as the Radiance. So, he teleported himself, possibly with some retainers if they're even real ones, and his palace to his dream realm. He couldn't do anything anymore. The only way he could keep some semblance of Hallownest's life was by teleporting his palace somewhere outside of the Radiance's reach. He was defeated, along with his entire kingdom. The Radiance pulled most of the bugs of Hallownest to her brilliance. Some managed to survive because of various reasons, but the kingdom itself fully fell into ruin. The White Lady at some point retreated to her gardens, sealing her body to never share any dalliances again, regretting everything that happened with the vessels. Of the 5 great knights, one lived quietly in her house beside a graveyard at some point. One died protecting her queen. One of them became a plant. One completely went missing, and the last one spent his days protecting the waterways. The scholars I talked about continued the research, killing most of the bugs in the capital in the process, and failing to do anything about the Radiance. Some bugs maintained some sense of self, but they also just became husks, doing what they were doing before the infection, but now fully infected. Eventually, the Pale King died in his throne. It's not clear why exactly, but we know that there was no resistance, seeing as he was just sitting on his throne when we reach him. It seems like it was the work of the Void, but we can't know for sure. Maybe he just had a heart attack, I don't know. Either way, he was dead. The how didn't matter, and that left Hallownest with no real governor and plunged it into insanity. to the point that some of the not fully infected bugs started eating each other, leaving only a few people in the capital, now the Sphere Tiers, uninfected. Back in the White Palace, if the Night Dream nails the corpse of the Pale King, it shows that the last remaining thoughts that plagued the Pale King's mind were no cost too great. And also, if I am to survive, the infection must die. Let me remind you that everything I talked about happens before the start of the game, when Hallownest became mostly an ancient memory. The game starts with a scream from the chosen vessel, calling the other vessels to him so that they can take his place. Because while the sealing didn't fully stop the infection, it did halt it greatly. At that point, the chosen vessel was almost fully infected. Somehow, he must have known that some of his siblings escaped from the abyss, or it could have just been a simple cry for help. Either way, that scream is what led the knight, our protagonist, into Hallownest. The game has 5 different endings, 3 of which are unique. One of them is about sealing the Radiance again, taking the chosen vessel's place. Another one is about killing the Radiance, and the last one is about killing a stronger version of the Radiance by unifying the Abyss. I will go through the endings, but first, let's talk about the chosen vessel, or as the Pale King deemed him, the Hollow Knight. The state of his mind isn't entirely known. Dream nailing him shows that at that point, he's in a constant battle with the Radiance, barely keeping himself sane. Lines about killing the usurper, or father? Some lines implanted in his mind by the Radiance, while others are him barely hanging on to a thin thread of what has become of him. Once the knight reaches the Black Egg Temple, the place of the chosen vessel's sealing, we see him chained up, completely, a result of his sealing. Once we free him, the fight starts. This is, narratively, one of the best boss fights of all time. Once the fight starts, everything goes as normal. The knight dodges, the vessel attacks. The knight attacks, the vessel fights back. This goes on for minutes, with the knight and the vessel locked in a battle. But why is the chosen vessel fighting the knight? Wasn't the entire plan to have him replaced? Why is he trying to stop the knight? Well, halfway through the fight, the chosen vessel starts stabbing himself over and over and over again, splattering, painting, and covering the arena with his now orange infected blood. The music taking a more somber tone. There is no dialogue, just insanity. The chosen vessel is being controlled by the Radiance as a last-ditch effort to stop the knight. But the vessel still has some willpower left. So, he starts trying to kill himself, stopping the Radiance from interfering. The chosen vessel is helping you, the knight, kill him. The Radiance starts taking more drastic measures, controlling the infection in the chosen vessel's body, slamming his body all over the place in efforts to kill the knight. This isn't a fight. This is mercy. The only way you can give mercy to the failed Hollow Knight. The only way to set him free. Eventually, the vessel's body starts failing. He starts limping, and the Radiance can barely even control his now dying body anymore. The chosen vessel can only die now, dying like a failed experiment, like the rest of the cursed kingdom. If you played the game without going through the White Palace, you kill the chosen vessel and focus the infection onto yourself. This is the Hollow Knight ending. This is the bad ending. Sure, the infection is now sealed away again, but that is still only a temporary solution, not a final one. Remember how I said the Pale King's plan failed because of the love he and the chosen vessel shared? Well, I lied. His plan failed the moment he came up with it. There never was any quote-unquote Hollow Knight. It was only a flawed ideal, going against what it means to be human, or in this case, sentient. Without a mind to think, a will to break, or a voice to cry suffering, you're left with nothing. No one can be hollow. Everyone has some semblance of individuality, whether it's me, you, or any possible Hollow Knight. Everyone has beliefs. Everyone has dreams, a will. Someone without any semblance of individuality is less than even a robot. To be truly hollow, you have to leave everything behind. Any goals, ambitions, pain, suffering, joy, anger, hunger, mind, will, instinct, orders, feelings, sight, hearing, desire, lack of desire, determination, everything you can think of. You would have to become no more than air, invisible to everything that can possibly give someone a sense of self. And of course, no entity like that exists, not even the knight. The Pale King's plan was flawed in every way possible. It could never have worked. Even if you seal the radiance, it's only a matter of time until the infection starts spreading again. If you dream nail this one big mushroom, he thinks, pale worm, what good to foresee a demise? Unavoidable. Most likely, the Pale King always knew about the fall of his kingdom. He knew it would happen, so instead of trying to prevent it, he tried to delay it until the end of time. That's why he's so focused on eternity, an eternal kingdom, an eternal ceiling, but never any endings. He could never think of ending the infection meant to destroy his kingdom, because that goes against everything that he is. He knew his kingdom wasn't going to be eternal, so he delayed its fall. Hollow Knight is a story about two things: pointlessness of delaying the inevitable instead of fighting it, and that a hollow existence isn't a person but a thing, like a chair or a building. These things are hollow, hollower than even a bot. But a person, no matter what you do, unless you kill them, will never be hollow. That is the first ending. That is the Hollow Knight ending. The second ending is the Dream No More ending, where with the power of the Dream Nail, you invade the Radiance's dream realm. In it, with the help of every other vessel, you drag the Radiance into the abyss, most likely killing her, once and for all. This is the good ending. The Radiance is gone, and so is the infection. Once in her dream realm, you slowly unify most of the Void, and take down the Radiance with every sibling, including Hornet to an extent. Once the Radiance is banished to the Abyss, basically killing her, the black egg inside of the Black Egg Temple disappears, and then the infection fades away. The knight and every other vessel either die or return to the void, finally resting in peace, for real. Even the chosen vessel helps you out. In short, this is the ending where you break a cycle that hasn't begun yet. Hollow Knight's themes can be seen as similar to Dark Souls, but whereas in Dark Souls there is no way to really break the cycle other than creating a whole new world, in Hollow Knight you have to destroy the cycle before it begins. A cycle of vessel after vessel, taking in the infection, keeping the world alive. This is the second unique ending. This is the Dream No More ending. The third ending, called Embrace the Void, is DLC, but depending on how Silksong goes, it might be the most canon ending. In it, you have to go to Godhome, a dream realm where a different ancient civilization that once existed records gods, keeping them in its realm. In it, you can fight the pure vessel, which is the chosen vessel at its prime, and later the absolute radiance as the main god of this supposed pantheon. Because this is also a dream realm, killing the radiance here kills her for real. So, what makes it different from Dream No More? Well, this ending is about the knight fully unifying the abyss and becoming an actual god by itself, without the other siblings. At least, without their quote-unquote help. The knight becomes an entity called the Void Entity, basically the god of the abyss. Unlike Dream No More, where you drag the radiance into the abyss, here you straight up kill her, brutalizing her. The radiance remains helpless while you devour her, erasing her existence fully. After that, the Void Entity goes on to destroy Godhome and try breaking out to Hallownest, possibly to destroy it. There are two versions to this ending, depending on whether or not you have given the Godseeker a pale flower or not. If you don't, the Void Entity rampages through Hallownest. If you do give the Godseeker a pale flower, that very flower, at least visually, kills the Void Entity and fades away. Just like Dream No More, the infection disappears. But that leaves the chosen vessel in the temple. In this ending, you don't go to the temple, so you never get to fight the chosen vessel. Because of that, the chosen vessel stays alive, leaving the temple and, apparently, according to the ending cutscene, fights Hornet for whatever reason. As I said, depending on how Silksong goes, this could be the canon ending. If we see the chosen vessel in it, then that means that this ending is the canon one. We just have to wait for Silksong to come out. Either way, this is the third and final unique ending, and most likely the best one. This is a video I have been wanting to make for a while now. It's not about Fate, so I'm not sure how well it will do, but I still loved making it. It's a little bit longer than I thought it would be, but that's fine, at least it's not an hour long. I don't think I missed too many stuff. After all, this is only meant to be a Jade the Pale King / Hollow Knight, or as I call them in this video, the Chosen Vessel video. There is some cut Dreamnail dialogue with the pure vessel, and it goes, "Do not think, do not speak, Do not hope. Do not. Dot, dot, dot. Imagine being the chosen vessel. The fate of an entire kingdom falls on whether or not you can be an emotionless husk. Like, how do you even resist developing feelings? You can't. The act of resistance gives you feelings. The guilt that comes from that must be rather intense. Lore-wise, the Hollow Knight wiki... Excuse me. Lore-wise, the Hollow Knight wiki might be one of the best out there. The fact that it highlights quotes is amazing. And of course, Mossbag's Hollow Knight videos help out a lot as well. I don't think there's a Hollow Knight fan that hasn't watched them. If there's anything you want to say or point out, leave a comment. I will most likely reply. Same goes for if you have any video ideas. You know, I might run out of those. But honestly though, the White Lady must be the horniest